Okay, last session of our 2-day weekend retreat. 3 Dan Tiens, 7 chakras. We've come so far, and yet we don't have all that far to go. So how nice. Where we last left off, our young heroes were exploring. We were doing, what's it called? Introspective, contemplative yoga of exploring our inner being through the lens of the 7 chakra model. So root chakra, red in color, related to the earth element. It's got an elephant in there. It says lum 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 lum, or I don't know if that's the melody yours sings. That's mine today, apparently. And there's a square in there we'll talk about later. And those are the things. And it's about survival. If you wanted your one keyword, it's about survival. We talked about all kinds of methods about that. And then we had our secundus, the sacral plexus, or the Svadhisthana chakra, meaning the seat of the self, the seat of the self. And this one, we had a keyword as about intimacy, or about relationship, relationality. And another keyword that I forgot, flow, because it's the water element. Okay, another keyword that I forgot is pleasure in this second chakra. So this is an interesting thing. And, I expect if you use this, it'll be in your own spiritual journey or working with people who are already kind of into some stuff. And so I'm kind of speaking to you in terms of like what comes up sort of for intermediate practitioners. And one of the things you may notice is that there are folks who can experience like intrinsic joy or intrinsic bliss because they have their heart center open or this crown center, but they have a really unhealthy relationship with pleasure. And this can be a blocked or less than optimal functioning of this second chakra center. So here's your affirmation, anti-toxic affirmation. Pleasure is good. Okay, so try saying that silently to yourself 3 times. Pleasure is good. Pleasure is good. Pleasure is good. And that's just a little test. If your system is like, oh, okay, cool, pleasure is good, then great. Some of us, you'll try that. And on number 2, you'll be like, pleasure is sin. Pleasure is God damned me for experiencing it. No, pleasure is good. And so this is something to know. If through, so this can be programmed in through religious or cultural message orating, but this can also be through some of these traumatic experiences, like some of us who are allergic to joy because we've had joy that has then been taken away from us, right? Shock has come because we let down our guard or something like that. And that can cause a real disruption in, in this thing, second chakra. So I wanted to make sure to mention pleasure because as we are awakening up the spiritual evolutionary serpent, remember we have chakra go out, chakra go in, chakra go up, chakra go down. And in my opinion and experience currently, you want all 4 of those to function properly. So in some of the spiritual traditions, and I am not immune to this, in some of our like Taoist work and stuff like that, the relationship with the pleasure in the second chakra is that it's something that should just be, transmuted, right? Like I was saying with that, some of those tantric views on sexuality, it's like, that's the fuel for your higher evolution. But a pathological way is that that's the only way you can go with that. You can't experience pleasure sort of horizontally or pleasure in a way that comes back down and infuses that root center. So this would actually be like doing resourcing and savoring practices could be thought of as a way of using the second chakra to remedy the first. Like we take the pleasure and the savoring that generates and actually use that to build up that thriving and safety survival center, right? So then if you can't activate that, then you're going to have to work on the second chakra so that you can allow yourself to feel pleasure or comfort. So these are all just these valences of meaning, right? Root chakra would be more about, gosh, I can't let myself relax and feel safe, like existentially. Second chakra would be more about, I can't allow myself to receive, to have intimacy, to have pleasure. And that's how you know it's time to do a little work on there. But it really afflicts spiritual communities, not just the like Christian ones that I would first think of. Like I know some Buddhists who could really use this because they've internalized these toxic guilt cult ideas about whether they're allowed to thrive, like whether that's a sin or not for me to be happy without anything else. Just being happy as like part of the nature of life, you know? And so sometimes we can get into this thing of, may all beings be happy and free from suffering except me. And one could begin to remedy that. So obviously one could look at that, look for the incongruity in that. Oh, how about may all beings be happy? That's going to have to include you. It might even have to start with you, right? Because you're out there on the street corner being like, I've got a message of pure joy. Well, how's your life? It sucks. Well, then why should anyone listen to you? But as well, oh gosh, what was I about to say? That image was so funny to me in my brain. Oh, yeah. So you might want to do that contemplative stuff. But another way would be you might actually just do the yoga postures for the second chakra, or just do the breathing, or just do the color visualization. And it can start to work at those kind of what we might consider psychological issues, blockages from the energetic angle. Okay, moving right along then. Your third chakra, counting from the bottom, their name is Manipura. Manipura. It's in the chat box. It's Manipura. Manipura Alengde. Okay, Manipura. The Sanskrit is really fun on this one and illuminating because mani is a gem or a jewel. Mani is a gem or a jewel. And it actually refers to, in the alchemical traditions that I've been taught, it refers to what we use as that pearl in the Taoist tradition. And as well, what we've been talking about that constructed new center of gravity, right? A non-reactive. It's not, I am my instincts. I am my emotions. I am my thoughts. It's a creative center of gravity. In some texts, they talk about like a self-luminous jewel. So that would be this mani. And it's made famous, of course, by the mantra Om Mani Padme Hum. One interpretation of that is that you actually grow that self-luminous creative source out of the muck and the shit of the bottom of the lake of life. And that's where the jewel has to grow from, because Padme is a lotus. Om Mani Padme Hum. So it's the jewel within the lotus. Okay, so that's mani. Mani is a gem or a jewel. And then pura, if you read a lot of translations, they'll say like the city of the jewel or something like that. And this is like, so we talked about in Svadhisthana, sthana means seat. So you have like Pakistan, Kurdistan, etc. And then in this one, pura is where you get cities like Jaipur. And literally it means watchtower. Means a watchtower. Like in the ancient times, right? You would have like a fortified structure that you could see the whole land from. So Manipura is the watchtower of the gem. The watchtower of the gem. Fun? Good? Okay, cool. I'm trying to read body language in a Zoom meeting. Sometimes I succeed, sometimes I fail. So I will occasionally ask. My early wake up time also has somewhat messed up my interpersonal circuitry. in my positronic net. So I may be asking, do you like me? Am I making any sense? Derp, 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 derp. And hey, what a great time for that while we're on the Manipura chakra. Hey, perfect timing. So one interesting thing, hopefully Kat's still online, but I think she went away, but one interesting thing you can tell her later is that the acupoint at your navel, conception vessel 8, is also, it has a similar name, Shen Chui, which in Chinese means the watchtower of the spirit, the watchtower of the Shen. And in this case, it's Shen there is referring to what we're calling your original spirit, also associated with that jewel. So whether these traditions were talking across the Silk Road, or whether early Indo-European stuff turned into Bon, which turned into Taoism and then came back, whatever it is, there's a real sort of universality in the understanding of this center as signified by these names. So Manipura, in the Western kind of New Agic version of these chakras, you will see this is often given as the solar plexus. But if you are reading in kind of various books, like get yourself a collection of Westernized chakra books from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and early 2000s. And you'll see they do this thing of, they're like, some of them are like, oh yes, the navel chakra, and others are saying the solar plexus, and some go as far as they're like, oh, the spleen chakra or the pancreas chakra. And I'm not sure when that all started, but what you will note is that in the yogic texts that I'm familiar with, this chakra is located in your belly button. So this, what we were working with as Svadhisthana, like in the Tibetan yogas, is really right around the genital region or in the genitals itself. And then the Manipura is in the navel itself. But we're going to use the solar plexus one because it works quite well. And in Qigong, these are also the points front and back of your microcosmic orbit. So you remember when we learned the microcosmic orbit as the exercise, not like as an inner fire Kundalini training, but as an exercise, you remember we did like this ajna, this yin tong third eye point on the front. And then in the back, you've got your jade pillow. And these are considered later to be gates to where the chakra is, the ajna chakra, in the central channel in the head. So as we work with the Qigong, we're opening up these centers. So you've got the heaven's chimney here, and you've got big hammer matching it on the back. You've got Zhong something or other, I forget the name of it, and you've got Shandao on the back. And then you've got Ren 14, whatever its name is, and then on the back, you've got squeeze the spine point, governing vessel, I think it's 11 or something like that. So we've got these matching points front and back. And when you're working that system, the solar plexus is where this center shows up. So I just say that hopefully not to confuse you. This is kind of an intermediate class. Basic classes are like, this is the solar plexus chakra, and then they just move on. But because you're intermediate students, as you read books, the question should come up for you. Why does this one say navel chakra and this one says solar plexus chakra? I don't know. Did that ever come up for any New Age kids aside from me? What the hell's a spleen chakra? Okay, good. They're all the same. And basically it's because one good reason for this is because this Manipura center kind of encompasses the upper part of that hara energy, but not so much the down in your generative organs part of it, but the part that's like your guts, your belly. So in a way, you could think of that Svadhisthana and the Manipura as sort of like the two halves of the lower Dan Tiens. In a way, you could think of that, right? Or you could think of Svadhisthana as the fire below the alchemical cauldron, and Manipura as the jewel sitting in the top. These are some ways to do it, but for our purposes, it works really well to locate this right in your solar plexus. So that's what we're gonna do. Okay, and but if you talk to your friend and they're like, oh yes, the navel chakra, then you just go, oh yes, the navel chakra, absolutely. And then your other friend is like, I heard it was the solar plexus chakra, and you're like, yes, absolutely, the solar plexus chakra. Well, I heard it was the left big toe. No, you're wrong. Okay. The left big toe is the terminal end of the Ida Nadi, and I will hear no further argument upon it. So, solar plexus chakra is considered a yellow color, considered to have a yellow color, or considered visualized. So that's the other piece with this. Thanks, Faj, for reminding me what I was going to say, is that these aren't really locations in the body. There are whole pieces of work where people are like, oh yes, see, this is right where the adrenals are and the pancreas. And so that's what they were talking. That's not what they were talking about. They're not talking about physical structures that you would find on dissection. They are talking about patterns of feeling, somatosensory integration, psychosomato and sensory integration, right? And so the locations will vary based on tradition, right? And this is why, the Taoists do 3 Dan Tiens. And if you think of them as 3 Dan Tiens, then that's how your subconscious through the body will communicate with you. So when we're doing that, like, hey, how's the balance in that? You'll notice when we were doing that practice, we're like, so how's the balance between the head, heart, and gut? Your body doesn't usually go, oh yeah, head, heart, and gut is fine, but don't forget the throat chakra. It responds to you according to the questions that you asked, right? So in this, we're just setting up, we're going, now we have a solar plexus chakra. And it's not that it is that, it's that that's congruent with how our body mind works so that we can develop a symbolic system of communication there. Okay, so we practice with it as a golden yellow light, and more on that in a moment. Its Bij mantra is Ram, 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 Ram. And that is because that is the Bij mantra of the element fire. Fire. So this is the fire center. And it's easy to remember. Its animal friend symbol is a ram. So its mantra is Ram, and its animal is a ram. I know, kitty. I made that sound like a kitty cat meowing. It's a ram. His Bij mantra is Ram, Ram. And you can kind of feel how that has this like empowerment, Ram. So as we use this is why, we kind of take these collection of symbols and we work our way toward what's the vibe I'm supposed to be getting about this from these ancient people. And if you feel the difference between the water element and the Vam of that Svadhisthana center versus the fire element and the Ram of the Manipura center, you get a sense of like, oh, okay, I get it. Something fiery is going on here. Right. So the watery center down below is meant to be this relationality, which is watery. That's why there's crocodile in it, because it's also dangerous and surprising sometimes. And then this is, let's see, one keyword if we were to do, survival, relationships. This one we should say persona. Persona. So Manipura is really the center of your persona. If we were doing, what's his name? Maslow. Remember old Maslow's hierarchy of needs? So up to your heart center is basically where his pyramid is. So you've got survival needs on the bottom, and then what? Like interpersonal needs, right? Community, interpersonal needs, something like that. And then up here, you have this starting to become a person, but this Manipura center is still kind of trying to meet your interpersonal needs. Once you get to the heart, that's where you would be in that self-actualization in Maslow's hierarchy. So we have this, it's kind of building up as a stack. Okay, so did we get them? We got our symbols. Yellow, golden, solar, Ram, Bija of the fire element, its element is fire, and it has a ram. And that is because this is the healthy or unhealthy manifestation of, this solar plexus type energy, is that it is the forcefulness of the fire element. It's that forcefulness of the fire element. So similar to our practice for the second chakra, let's try this affirmation on for size. Say to yourself, por favor, power is good. Power is good. Power is good, Anakin. Oh, power is good. And just notice what comes up for you when you think that. What do you think? How do you respond to this inquiry inside? Power is good. Anybody revel in it? Anybody have a aversive reaction to this one? Anybody do both at the same time? Yeah, okay, got one of you. Yeah, so 60% rebel, 40% cringe. That's great. That's great. Both. What kind of power and how is it wielded? Yeah. And so the what kind of power and how is it wielded is a really kind of an integrative or integral response to that question, right? Power is good. And be like, okay, I can get with that. Tell me more, right? But you can often tell these like old politicians from the South, usually, they who love power, because they lead from this center, right? And they've usually, if you touch that thing, it's not soggy, right? You can look at it and it's this big, hard, armored, made of pork rinds and fear, right? And they might think power is good. Power is good. Yes. And then you've got others of us who, let's say, like we're spiritual types, our heart opens to bliss. Wow. Yeah. Amazing. And then like, sometimes we can have pretty decent sex, but our partners always tell us that they just feel like I'm not really there with them because I'm just there serving, and they actually want to give me pleasure one time in my life, and they just don't completely feel me. Well, it's because in all my spiritual practice, I'm blocked here. And you say power is good, and I go, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Power, I grant all the power to God. And it's a dodge of one of these fundamental aspects of our human embodiment, right? To be human. And this is, partially, this is just my philosophical perspective. I throw it out there not as the truth, but as something for you to play with and reject or adopt or manipulate and modify as suits you. But one of the ideas of this chakra system is it's all the notes, all 7 notes on the flute of being human, right? And we don't really want to tape over any of those. Like, this wasn't meant to be a hexatonic or pentatonic scale, right? It's an octave that we're going to play. And so when you go, oh yeah, I've got the whole octave except for power, that one, we're not doing that one. You don't get to participate as fully in the experience of humanity. And then it's going to throw off all of the other stuff. Okay, so what might be some etiologies of this? Well, like myself, when I can remember as a young person seeing those types with their big hard bellies. Yeah, they're generally men. I do know a couple of women who lead from the Manipura unconsciously in this way. But seeing enough boss hogs in my life and going, I will never be that. And unfortunately, it's the old baby with the bathwater syndrome, because you can, if you deny power, then everything else gets to determine what your life is like, right? So we want to cut through this dichotomy of power is all good, power is all bad, and try to get to this, well, what kind of power? How are we using it, right? And this fundamental empowerment, like if you were to go to a tantric teaching from the Tibetan school, you have to have an empowerment. And this becomes like a religious ritual. Like you can see them sometimes, the lamas come through town, and it's really great blessing to get, but they say, oh, we're giving the such and such empowerment. And then you'll go and they chant a bunch of Tibetan to you. And then at the end, they're like, oh, and by the way, you just promised to do this mantra for the rest of your life. Like, I did? I don't remember anybody asking me if I promised anything. And you leave this ritual and you go, wait, I don't feel more empowered than I did before. But the yogic version of this from long, long ago is that those ceremonial enactments were meant to create a conducive atmosphere to wake you up to the fundamental power that is yours as a human, which are things like granting significance. This is a fundamental power that you possess as a human, right? That's again the Viktor Frankl method, right? I don't have much control over the circumstances, but I have absolute control over what I decide they mean. This is a well-tested concept in positive psychology, for example, and cognitive behavioral therapy, right? Is that you can reframe what it means. It gets lost because it's not all that flashy unless you really get it one day and you're like, wait, oh shit, that changes everything. But it gets lost in like these Tibetan religious rituals because it's sort of like, oh yeah, I can decide what things mean. Right, cool, whatever, moving on. But do you have anything that like lets me walk on water? Or something? It's like, well, that might take a little longer, but you could decide to be a nice person regardless of circumstances based on your ability to decide what things mean to you. That's a fundamental power that comes with being human, right? You have the fundamental power. So that was your significance granting power. You have a fundamental power to quit or go forward. This is a fundamental power in you. Now, sometimes you can fail, but you can choose to go forward into failure, right? Or there are other things where you're going forward and it's not going to benefit you, and you can choose to quit. Hey, oh, sorry, I quit, right? We have a power, although it is often rusted, to open to a situation or to constrict from a situation, right? These are not powers that are necessarily up at the surface or well practiced in us, but it's a revelation. And this is the beginning, as I've been taught, the beginning of the yogic path that says, this is yours. This is yours. You could radiate and bring value to a situation or not. That's on you. You're the only one who gets to decide that. And so we have our solar yellow, solar plexus. Do you get the connection? Is that you can choose whether you are the one who radiates significance onto things or whether you are the victim of them, right? Whether you choose when I'm going to quit, when I'm going to go forward, even if circumstances are doing their thing. Okay, well, I'm going to quit worrying about it. Or I'm going to go forward, even though this is going to ruin my health, but it's going to help all of my descendants in the next generation, right? You get to decide that. No one else gets to actually decide that for you. There's a level at which those decisions are your own. It's pretty cool. And so this is the radiance, which is the money. This is that self-luminous jewel. So we've got these two aspects. When that is unknown, or when this, like in human development, right, this level is the terrible 2s and 3s and also teenagers, right? These two big cruxes of personality development. The first one, it's like you figure out you're a me, you're not just your relationships, right? Second chakra is like you can do more than suck and lift your head and hiccup, maybe do a parachute response, right? That's all root center. And you start going, oh, I'm relationships. It's me and the tit. It's me and the kitty. It's me. Oh, wow. And then you hit like 2 years old and you generate the magic mantra of no. And you go, wait a minute. There's a thing I'm relating to. And then there's me. Wow. Me. Oh, me, hung. Right. And you develop this self. Then you get to ride on that self for a minute, but it's still sort of like within your family of origin. You're creating a self out of the raw material of your family of origin. And then you hit 11, 12, 13, and you go, wait, these parts of my family of origin, those are stupid. I'm going to create a self defined by being the opposite of that, right? Or sometimes I'm going to choose to define myself as exactly that. I'm going to be the perfect version of that. But this Manipura is the level of a constructed personality, And so it really has to do with that jewel in our alchemy, because that process developmentally in the 2s and the 3s and the teens, that's a semi-automatic process, right? If people are really dealing with arrested development, traumatic development, diversions, and that, they really do need to go see a therapist who specializes in those developmental stages, right? You can help them by hitting the acupoints, but you're not going to replace the therapy work. But that recapitulates itself. Does my voice sound really pretentious when I say recapitulate? But that recapitulates itself when you get to this alchemical work, because you are consciously constructing a persona as like the vehicle of divine radiance, right? That all that upper Dan Tiens stuff, that, all potential, the divine radiance stuff, but how's it going to talk to anybody? How the hell is God going to talk to anybody if you don't construct a sacred personality? Christ has no body now on earth but yours, no hands but yours, no feet but yours. Yours are the eyes through which he pours out compassion to the world. Right? So that's your Manipura. That's it. So if we were to look at, is this fun kind of advanced yoga alchemy stuff? You can look the other stuff up in a book. So I didn't quite know what I was going to teach today. So I'm like, okay, this is a surprise. Wow. But you could kind of think that the process of initiation mirrors these first 3 chakra centers, right? Number 1, you generally decide to change your life so that it's more aimed toward thriving. It's more aimed toward vitality. That's your root center. Then classically, you form a relationship with a guru or with a teaching stream or something like that. And in the tantric model, that second chakra is you're defining yourself by that relationship. This is where you can get a lot of challenges when ordinary effed up people like me, and maybe you, I don't know, get to do advanced spiritual practices, because we may not know how much weird traumatic material from that second chakra level of development, from that 0 through 2 level of development, we have now brought to the idea of merging with a guru, or merging with the deity, or creating this relationship with this spiritual community. All of that goes in there. But if done well, the idea is that, just like we said, in that, baby state, we define ourselves by our relationships. Very similarly, one defines oneself by relating to Lord Jesus, relating to Padmasambhava, relating to White Tara, to Mary Magdalene, to Gaia, whatever it is. This third chakra is where they practice then the exemplar yoga, which is not just doing what would Jesus do, it's attempting to actually do what would Jesus do if they were showing up as you, right? What would white Tara do in this circumstance? Wow, we've got a house full of plague. We've got these various human limitations. I'm me. I've got these various traumas. And if white Tara showed up to all of that, how would she best use it? Right? If Vajrayogini showed up to traffic in Sacramento in the current era of climate change and transphobia, what would Vajrayogini do if she had these tools? Oh, okay, cool. This is the work of the solar plexus chakra. So really kind of fun. And that's kind of more the navel chakra in those Tibetan tantras, but it's all kind of in here, right? So you'll know this one's very obvious because when you get awkward about your personality, you'll get a pit in your stomach, don't you? Have you ever experienced this? Oh, oi, gods. Just if you haven't experienced this, channel some of my introvertness. I'll give you a transmission of it. And then just think, you went to a party, you called someone the wrong name. Oh, God. Oh, no. So that'll show up here. In Taoist training, just to give you a little more advanced esotericism for your ongoing study, this area is called the yellow court, the yellow court. And obviously there's some cross-cultural influence there. But this is, as we learned, I think I probably taught you this when we did the, what's it called? Old man and tide pool exercise. One of the reasons for that is to clear this solar plexus area, because it's considered to be the heart in that Taoist alchemy is the emperor. It's like, that's your spirit. And it can't hear too many petitioners about emotional needs and trauma in the day, or it will lose its capacity to commune with heaven. And so they are asked to wait in the yellow court. When this is cleared, this is also sometimes, this then becomes in Taoist alchemy where you fuse mystical forces together and exert power through your meditative prowess. But you have to finish the clearing process from the old traumatic unresolved issues before this becomes this like alchemical cauldron through which to fuse this Taoist chi power. Yes, that is your yellow court. Okay, so Manipura chakra. Had no idea that that was what I was going to tell you about it, but we got them. So symbols, pathologies, and we'll get some practices. Were you just like turning up the approval rating, Matthew? That was great. It started here. It's okay. You were off to a slow start, but then you really got there. Okay, cool. So let's keep going, and then we're gonna do practices for these all at once later. So I'll just give you symbols and pathology and overview, and then we'll do practices. Okay, so Anahata. ANAHATA Anahata Chakra, or we can just say your heart chakra, Anahata Chakra. Perks up when you feed it coffee. Anahata Chakra. Okay, Anahata, un is the same in Sanskrit as in Greek. It means like un or like non, right? Anti. And then hata comes from a root word that means to hit. So this is usually translated as the unstruck, the unstruck. And one of the things that this might refer to is that when the pranas enter the central channel, it gives rise to what they call nada. If you're reading in texts like the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, one of my favorites, slowly being eclipsed by the Amrita Siddhi, but then they talk about nada. You're like, what's nada? It's the inner sound that comes up when you're in deep meditation. So have any of you had this experience? You get really quiet and you'll hear, there are various versions, but one of them goes, and you're just sitting there in meditation, you're like, whoa, God's playing the flute. Trip out. I remember one, and they're not particularly associated with specific centers. This one is associated with the heart because that symbolizes, as far as I've been taught, that symbolizes really the full entry of prana into the central channel. But as well, when you activate these head centers, it's almost kind of like the repressurization or something, is how it has always felt to me, creates this vibratory phenomena. So one time when I was working my way through the Taoist alchemy, I think I might have been on the head routes of the macrocosmic orbit or something. So you're doing microcosmic orbit and some other stuff, and then you're like swirling it around to wake up these head centers. And I was sitting in this stupid little apartment that I had in the woods, and like the refrigerator was making this weird noise, and it sort of set off the inner sound while I'm meditating. But the inner sound is going like, it's like sounds like this giant Tibetan bowl. So another one that you'll hear, the first one was, and then this one goes, and so I'm sitting there, I'm like, whoa, this is really loud. And then the fridge shut off, but then there was still all of this inner sound. It was just really cool. So anyway, just to let you know, if that comes up in your meditation, freak thou not. It is a good sign. It is a good sign. The more common one that you may hear in Taoism, they call the 10,000 cicadas, I think it's called. And that's the one that goes like kind of like steam or something, or like a bunch of cicadas just started to sing. So that one is a little more, some schools have a gradation of these. They're like, oh, this one means the prana started to enter, and this one means blah, 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 blah. But this one means, some of them do it by which center is being activated. In general, if you're getting the inner sound when you meditate, doing a good job. You're doing a good job. So then that's just a little bit of the etymology of, according to some, why this is called anahata, the unstruck sound, because it's nothing is creating that, right? It's just spontaneous. You're like, nobody's out there with a Tibetan bowl that they struck. There's just a sound sounding out of nowhere. But similarly, you Zen types, this is the sound of one hand clapping. There it is. How's that ASMR? Okay, so and that really has to do with this center, because if we're going like alchemically, where the Manipura, the jewel, is like the useful, constructed yogic self, the what would Jesus do self, the anahata is like your true self. Anahata is like your true self. So and that it's a self like with no qualities. This is where we get all Zen and weird, because they're like, when you realize your true self, you'll realize that you don't have a true self. And I'm like, who will realize that? And they're like, exactly. So you have to get into koan mindset to be able to get it. But that's one of the reasons of like, oh, the unstruck, just think, if you want to get to that mystical kind of level of this, think of, oh, it means what's the sound of one hand clapping? And okay, let's do this real quick so we can have some practice. Go ahead, take your two hands and clap them and listen to the sound. We're going to do some sensory, tantric, shamanic, dzogchen meditation. So just do a few of these. Okay, now clap with one hand and listen to what sound that makes. Okay, groovy. Did we do enough practice for that to work? Yeah, you could listen to the movement of the arm. Okay, but what they're trying to get to is Listen to the listening. What would it be like to listen to listening? Okay, so then another one, I can't believe I'm about to do this. Heather Lee, I can't believe I'm about to do this. Okay, but another one they do, let's do this as fast as possible because I can't believe I'm about to do this. But what's this thing? Right? You could say a marker, but you're supposed to say it's a pen, right? And then you're supposed to say, okay, if those cute little dogs from Janelle's house came into the room and I waved this in front of their face, what would they do with it? Well, if they're not exceptionally well trained, all right. And so if you put yourself in the perspective of the dog, what is this? It's chew toy, right? They're not going to write letters to their best friend down the street. Oh, I got pup cup today. I went to the park. Mom says I'm not allowed to have pup cups. They're not actually good for me, as cute as it is to put a video on Instagram. But I hope I see you tomorrow on our walkies. And like, they don't do that. It's a chew toy. It is tangibly, authentically a chew toy. It's not a pen for them. It's tangibly, authentically a chew toy. So then you're supposed to think, if I put this down here, and now all the people leave the room, all the dogs leave the room, what is it? Yeah, good. If you did gym, that's what it is. And you want to catch the part of your mind, which you can glimpse beginner's mind for a second. Before your brain says, well, I don't know, there's a moment of actually not knowing, which is this kind of the same as when, annoying Zen people are like, it is what it is. But that in like a true not knowing is like, what? It's just that, right? And what you might feel is a spaciousness open up. Can anybody start to get that from the clapping the hands and the like, there's no dogs and no people in the room, but there are things that artists that were formerly known as pens and etc. So that spaciousness might be what is meant by unstruck. It's almost like a koan. Like, what does a sound like that was never strummed on the guitar? But if you can get into that weird tantra, like if somebody asked you that while you were on mushrooms, that would be so cool. What? Wow. If you can get into that, you're starting to get the vibe of this heart chakra. So in super esoteric secret yoga, don't tell anybody I told you this. I'm closing registration. Nobody is allowed to register for this workshop afterwards, so I can tell you this. But they go through these various stages in the yoga, right? Of like, take your vows, settle down, learn to meditate, settle down your survival response, root chakra. Then like relate to the deity or the guru, second chakra. Then act like the guru, construct a personality that is guru-ish. And then once you do all of that, then the final stage, called the completion stage, is where you dissolve all gurus in the room. No outside guru, nobody there, nobody home. And that's what's going on in this little heart chakra. So this is like your true self. In the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, this is called Swabhava. Swabhava, your self-nature. There's that swa we learned in Svadhisthana, right? Self-nature. And it's this, for non-dual tantrics, it's this tricky kind of statement, because your self-nature is that yourself has no intrinsic nature, except the intrinsic nature of having no intrinsic nature. So what does that mean? Why should I care? Because the idea is not to induce existential dread. I hope I didn't do that with this discussion of emptiness from a yogic perspective. But if you think of absolute openness, absolute potentiality, like the worst midlife crisis would be that you develop this whole collection of defensive patterns, and then you turn 40 and you go, well, shit, I guess that's who I am now. Right? Wouldn't that feel awful? Have you ever done this? It feels really claustrophobic, right? You got this little inner Jack Nicholson. Well, maybe this is as good as it gets, right? And it's like, it's super claustrophobic. What would be the opposite of that? Like, what if what you are, who you are, was absolutely unbounded? That's what this heart chakra. So when you pierce that in this 7 chakra model we're doing, that would, or when you begin to trickle a little prana through there, that's what we'll start to get, is the restrictions of what's possible for me, what's possible for my partners, what's possible for my planet, what's possible for my world. All of that starts to go like, who knows what's possible, dude? Like, and how that affects your posture is it goes from this, right? When the posturabilities are limited, it would be logical to contract in defensiveness, right? If that claustrophobic view of the world was the real view, we should just close down and be as safe as possible. But if your possibilities are theoretically unlimited, we start to greet life with that sense of open-heartedness. Okay, that's a very high flyover mystical view of the heart chakra. Let me see what's in here. Like the auditory version of trying to look at the space between your eyes and at the thing you were looking at. Yeah. Or like when you put your finger out here and then take it away, but look at that spot in space. And that's actually it's a method by using that way of setting up your eyes. That's actually what your eyes will do, how your face and eyes are in deep meditation states like that. And so this is Hatha Yoga. You do it with the body, and then you experience the correlate in consciousness, and you can sort of ride that. So that's pretty fun. Okay, what else is in here? Things vibrate when other things are vibrating at the same frequency, although unstruck. Yeah, interesting. What about the sound? It sounds the cracking of the bones, for sure. Yeah, I think that's trapped air pockets in your fascia. Or no, it's actually not trapped air pockets. I believe it's your fascia and your joints are like microscope slides, and they get hydrostatic pressure stuck together. And so when you do those velocity range of motions, they unstick the microscope slides. Now, do you have a different answer?
No, what I mean is like when you're meditating and there's like this sound and that sound, and then there's one that's like I don't know if it's like bones breaking or thunder inside your head.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
That's
they say that's the opening of the Brahmarandra. It's the opening of the gate at the top, Heaven's Gate. Yeah. So good work. Get thee to a master of the 6 yogas and have them teach you Poa. And then definitely have them teach you how to come back in and do the Amitayus mantra. Okay, posturabilities. Thank you, Deborah, for liking that. Okay, stringed instruments in the room. Environment. All right, so this was symbolism of the heart chakra. Oh, it's green. Sorry, I got all into this non-dual tantric rantric, and forgot to tell you the lesson plan. So it's green. And what's the green symbolize here? It's like that generativity. So when we were doing connecting with all of nature in that middle Dan Tiens, lately I see that as green, because it's that sense of just this like all generative, altruistic aspect. So green light, the Bij mantra is Yam, Y-A-M, Yam. And why? Because that's the Bij mantra of the air element, or sometimes they'll translate as the wind element. The wind element. P-H-O-W-A, Powa. Not to be confused with power, which is about your belly chakra. Oh yeah, that's why I thought of Sith Lords, because that was his famous line in that terrible, terrible movie. Right? Unlimited power. Okay, so yeah, back to it. I watched a clip. Okay, total tangent, because I got to get my brain back into reality after all that one hand clapping stuff. But I saw a clip of Return of the Jedi, like when it first came out, of the people in the theater watching it for the first time. It was like an audience react. Somebody had a video camera in there somehow. And I remember how spooky and dreadful that Emperor character really was in the first 3 Star Wars movies. And I realized why those other ones made me so mad. Because he was powerful, but he was such a dork. And you don't want a dorky villain. Like, I'm a Sith Lord. Okay, so now we're back. Now we're back. So air element, green light. It also Oh, we'll do the other symbols in a minute. Apparently this one has an antelope aminal companion, but I haven't really studied the animal companions above the Manipura chakra, I'll be honest with you. So I was like, why don't I remember these? Well, because I never really made a study of them. I've always found that the lower ones seem more like they associate with animals to me. And then these heart chakra ones, that in just my practice, that doesn't associate as much. So, but this one traditionally is an antelope. Okay, and then this is also the first of the transpersonal centers. Many practitioners and teachers will tell you this is the first of the transpersonal centers. Okay, how do you correlate being green in the generative and the heart chakra system and those colors and expansion ideals associated with the liver and TCM? I don't. They're two separate systems. Yeah, good. Yes, exactly. You got it. So transpersonal. So if we were doing Maslow's hierarchy, this would be like actual individuation, right? So if you ever studied that, right, there were survival needs, and then there were like interpersonal needs, but like on the level of like comfort and cuddles and stuff like that that mammals need. And then you've got like personality development. I forget his names, but I do remember the top one was individuation. And that's this heart chakra where it's as if you're coming from an authentic sense of self, coming from an authentic sense of self. And in non-dual philosophy, this is this heart chakra is the union of heaven and earth, the union of heaven and earth, which is really kind of cool because you've got 3 above it and 3 below it. That's why I like the 7 chakra system, because it puts the heart right in the middle mathematically. And in our Taoist tradition, that as well is the seat of your kind of true self. The true self is the solar plexus center, we know pathologically is all about this gathering of personal power. The heart center is the evolutionary move beyond selfishness or beyond narcissism or something like that. So you could say someone who has stabilized their center of gravity in this heart center would be someone who doesn't really default to a selfish mindset. And in a way, I would imagine like all of us in this class have a degree of that without getting too haughty, right? But you are likely making your decisions. Like this is where like in Buddhism, they have this right livelihood as one of the main ones. And what is it? It's like you try to, okay, I'm going to have to eat. Let me do it in a way that doesn't screw up anybody else's life, right? This is this basic heart chakra bridge. So it's considered to be the first transpersonal rather than merely personal center. That's simple enough, isn't it? Okay, so pathologically, what you might see if this thing gets closed down is that we don't get access to transpersonal states. And I don't mean those like the way out union with God ones, but I mean things like compassion or intrinsic joy or altruism. And remember, these are in and out. So that means giving or receiving of those, right? So you might have a functional heart chakra in radiating compassion and a dysfunctional heart chakra in receiving compassion. You might have a functional heart chakra in radiating joy. Oh, I'm the clown of the party. Wow. And then when it comes time to be like, hey, what makes you happy? Can I tickle you with this feather? No. So you've got an imbalance in that case, right? This as well is love. And we had pleasure and we had intimacy and relationship down in that second chakra. This is another aspect of that. So that was erotic. This is more agape of that capacity for unconditional love. Okay, that's simple enough. Let's keep on moving on. So then you've got your throat chakra is called Vishuddha. I think it's sometimes done with 2 S's and sometimes done with an H. And I'm just going to do 2 S's and an H for now. Vishuddha, probably sometimes done with a diacritical mark. Sanskrit, everybody who's not a scholar transliterates Sanskrit differently. Okay, Vishuddha means purification. And this is because, actually, this is one of those that's in the Bible, Kat, per yesterday's question, in which the Lord Jesus, somebody's asking him, I think, about like whether you have to eat kosher food or something like that. And his response is, you should be a lot more concerned with what comes out of your mouth than what goes into it. Okay, yogically, one thought is that when the prana reaches this level, you develop the capacity to purify anything that you take into your body. So mythologically, if you're reading yogic texts, this is where somebody gives them poison food or something like that. And they're like, that was delicious. Got any more? And then their enemies are like, what happened? And then the commentator is going, he had the yogic power of purification through inner fire. That's one of the sort of cities that can arise from this center. One of the other aspects of this that you might contemplate is the granting of significance. So this throat chakra is all about speech and expression. And one of the ways we utilize our granting significance power as a human being is through the stories that we tell ourselves about what is happening. So becoming a mantrin, becoming a mantra yogin, is switching from the stories that we go about life and we go, oh, that's impure, and that's wrong, and this is dumb. Basically, that whole problematic consumerist orientation. And we begin telling ourselves stories about life as a sacred landscape. And through that power, this is said to be a yogic act of purification. We purify our reality by how we grant significance to it. Okay, that makes sense. This chakra is considered to be blue. I tend to use a sky blue for this one myself, but you can research what turns you on. And its Bij mantra is hum, hum, and you can feel it, right? It's a throat chakra mantra. And again, you could say, oh, wait, I thought ha was the heart. Well, yeah, in that other system, but now it's the throat. Okay, why? Because you can go ah, and you can feel it in your chest, but you could also go ah, and you can feel it in your throat. Simple, right? It just has to be congruent enough to be the poetry of your inner body. We are now going beyond the basic elements, and in the system I like the most, this chakra is associated with the element of sound. So we had the 4 basic constituents of matter: the earth, the air, the fire, the water, return. We got the 4 basics, and now we are in sound. Okay, so this one, very simple and obviously, is all about expression. It's all about expression. So symptomologically, you will find when this is closed down that we have problems expressing ourselves in any of the places that we need to. You'll also find pathologies in the voice and the throat and the lungs and the esophagus, as well as throughout the neck. So these are these throat chakra things. All of these as well in our Taoism have a belt vessel associated with them in esoteric Taoism. And so the idea is that that thing gets too constricted. Okay, 2 more. Let's do them. The mystic third eye is named Ajna. Ajna. I mean, you could say Ajna or Ajna, and probably no one will cry. But the nya, 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 nya syllable is why there's a K in knowledge, because it comes from the Greek gnosis, which is from this Proto-Indo-European root. So you get words in Sanskrit like prajna, And we already learned the root words for that this weekend. Pra, meaning like forward or livingness, and then nya, knowing. So prajna is usually translated as like wisdom, right? Ajna is a good translation would be beyond knowing, beyond knowing. Yeah. So because the means non or un, and in this case, it's similar to that beginner's mind thing that we spoke about in the heart. There are recurring themes in these. Obviously, there are various flavors of the same mystical states. And but one of the reasons for that is by focusing on this center, for some folks, you can bring the mind to a state of stillness. And so the knowing that they're talking about is discursive knowing. And when you still the discursive knowing, you can give rise to a deeper form of knowing. So this is called ajna. Okay, its color, according to some, is an indigo color, like a deep blue, or some people will see like a purple here. So basically, it's a rainbow. In case you didn't get that yet, I didn't say it yet. It's a rainbow, the Roy G. Biv or something like that. So indigo is what comes after that on the rainbow. And that's what would be in this third eye center. It's associated with the element of light, the element of light. And its Bij mantra is Om. Bij mantra is Om. Okay, that's simple enough. We'll do practices with them later after a break. And then your final one at the crown, its name is Sahsrara. Sahsrara. Which means, if I remember correctly, the thousandfold. The thousandfold. Because this is said to be the 1,000-petaled lotus. The 1,000-petaled lotus. Okay, and then this is where you can say the heart was the first transpersonal chakra. You could say this is the last transpersonal chakra. This is as transpersonal as you get, right? The crown center is sort of said to be your connection beyond when your sense of self in a body ends and opens up to the divine or to the holotropic or to the universal, or however you want to say that. That's what's represented by this crown chakra. The cool thing, in my opinion, in the Himalayan yogi tradition, this is called the Mahasukha chakra, Mahasukha, which means great bliss, And spiritual bypassers around the world will know why this is great bliss, because if you really bring enough energy or attention or awareness to this, you will open beyond yourself, and it feels like such a relief. It feels like such a relief to just like not have a me for a second. And so that's easily facilitated by the crown chakra. The heart center is much more like doing Zen koans. It's kind of like, oh yes, I'm not me, but I am, but we are. The crown center is just like, boom, everything's made of God. La, 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 la. And so they have their, as you're going to play the flute of a human life, you want to know these notes. Okay, what about the transpersonal chakra above the head? Same or connected to the crown. So yeah, it's similar, and just think about what each of them do. So if we're going to say there are 7, then the crown one is the top. But that doesn't mean that there's not some functional usefulness from doing visualization or feeling of a center above the head. But in a way, these are all sort of part of the same continuum up here, just like the transpersonal center below the feet is kind of really part of your root center, although it can be useful to visualize that. That's my understanding. And it's similar in the Tibetan yogas. Why they have 5 instead of 7 one of the reasons is usually they don't always differentiate between these two, at least in their enumeration. They just say the head, right? You just got a chakra of the head. And then when you're doing yogic practices, they point these out. Similarly, they don't always talk about the base center. They stop at the secret place, right? Which is the more like the genital chakra. And so in a way, they're sort of, in their system, they're not differentiating these energies. And that's kind of similar with the crown and the transpersonal chakra. You could think of those as kind of a continuum, or you could utilize them as two distinct things in order to be able to get different benefits. Okay, last thing I'll say before a break, and then we'll let Janelle go take a 10-minute nap, and that'll be really helpful, is we can use this in medical Qigong sessions for people who really ought to dissociate for a minute and take a break from ego and the sufferings of the dualistic world, right? Some people come in and they're just like, they've been just beaten down by life for like 5 years. And so there's a technique by which you just open up this center, and it's almost like that Tibetan poa. But what happens is that their spirit body tends to leave. And what you'll notice is it'll open and then they just pass out. And the feeling in the room is like just nobody's home. It's like, you know how you can kind of tell when someone's dreaming, someone's awake, or, it's like if they weren't snoring, you wouldn't, and you walked in, you wouldn't be able to tell someone was in. There's no feeling of anybody in the room, right? They just went off to the spirit realms or something like that. So it's a great vacation from the torture of having a self. And we all need that vacation on occasion. It's not the entire octave of human flute playing, but it certainly is one of the notes, or maybe the embouchure itself. I don't know. I'll work on the analogy. So this is one thing to know. Okay, when we come back from our break, what we'll do is some practice. We're going to do our opening, the 7 chakra practice. We're going to do some yoga postures for these different centers. And we'll talk about like interventions. And what I might do is kind of open it up in a more discussion format so that we can really think of how to make this information practical for us. And depending on how much that takes, I have a few different practices in my pocket, some of which we might do today, some of which we might do in a later session. So, but that's my plan, is we're going to do the 7 chakra Qigong set. So we get another practice in together, and you also get that under your belt, so to speak, in your way down in your lower Dan Tiens, under your belt. And it's not just in your breast pocket, it's under your belt. And then we'll take it from there. Oh, color or sound of the top chakra in some systems, thank you, is violet. If we're going in the Roy G. Biv, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. Other kinds of purple work here, or what works best for me is usually white or clear light. That's what tends to work best for me. In one Taoist system, they use alternating gold and silver as the petals of this, and that has, we might do that practice at the end, which is an interesting effect. So, my dears, let us take a 15-minute break. In case you really do need to take like 10 minutes rapid yoga nidra, I might need to do that. So let's take a nice 15-minute break. And when we come back at 5 after, we're going to do some practices. So I'll see you then.
In yoga class 2 weeks ago, we did the healing sounds of the chakra.
Oh my.
Chakras. And the instructor had us, Om was the sound for the top and Sam was the sound for the third eye. Is that just one of those cases of different?
Yeah, there's different lineages.
Okay.
And they all do different stuff.
Yeah.
So for this work, what I highly recommend is one of the most powerful mantras. All right, so remember when you turn 2, you learn one of the most powerful mantras ever? No! Miko's good at this one. I love the way Miko says this one. And then when you turn 4 or 5, you learn another very, very powerful mantra. Why? Why? So what I suggest, now there are some techniques, you don't always have to ask why first. That would be like a ajna over dominant thing. Like you never practice until you know exactly why. Blah, 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 blah. But when somebody gives you a practice and you're like, oh, we did Om here and silent mantra here. Now you're doing Om here and Sa here. Why? Because in the why is where the work is, right? I've adopted this term, like work with a capital W, because that's the European terminology for inner alchemy, the work. But it's a great terminology to think of because it's not about the collection of which mantra is correct or which lineage can I hang my hat on. It's how do I use this, right? And so I don't know how you would use saw up here. Maybe for me, it'd be like, I'm sawing my way through delusions. Saw, saw, saw.
S-A-M.
Some.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel that one. That makes a difference. I don't know why it makes a difference, but it does. So yeah, it's just different lineages have their own practice, and to make them into functional inner alchemy, use that 4-year-old mantra. Why? Right? And if they give you some guilt and shame reasoning or tell you not to ask too many questions, then use your 2-year-old mantra. No. That'll be fun. All right. Any other thanks for that. That was fun. Any other comments or questions? Just wrapping up from what we did. We climbed the whole ladder, we played the whole octave, and now we are ready to do some practice. Okay, cool. Let's do a little Qigong session. Feel free, some of you need to lie down and stuff. Feel free to do that. But others of me need to do some Qigong. So let's also do that. All right, let's ring the temple gong. Good. Let's pull down heavens. Ready? Inhale. Exhale, high down. 2. And 3. All right, let's do that Tibetan preliminaries that we did yesterday, and we will work with these centers. So for standing up, we do our hands on our hips, and you're just going to exhale as you roll down, and inhale as you roll up. Switch at the top, and exhale, and inhale. We've got the idea that we are loosening up knots and constrictions in this throat chakra, as well as with the moving of the eyes and those upper centers of the head too. Down to the chest, and let's finish up. Then make your Vajra fist. Circle them 3 times. Inhale. Punch out, exhale. Bring it back over here. And we're going to inhale at these circles. Inhale and exhale. 1, 2, and 3. Switch directions. And 1, And you can just think about unkinking your heart chakra. Okay, then big hug, inhale. Left hand on top, slap. And hug it out. And again, it's just unkinking that heart chakra region. Any little knots or granthis in there. Then big hug. Right hand over. And big hug. Wonderful, wonderful me. Oh yeah, and then we have to do the crow's flight, don't we? So get your Vajra fist again. You're going to inhale up and then strike. Inhale. 1, 2, 3. One more time. Good. Then the heart strike, clasp, inhale, and then exhale 6 times. Then inhale, and you're going to strike the sternum 6 times. That should feel pretty groovy. Okay, then we're going to hunker down, and you're going to belly dance that belly button around in a circle. Round and round it goes. Where it stops, nobody knows. Reverse. And bring it on up. Let's do Bhastrika Pranayam, just a couple of rounds. So pulsing. Three, 2, 1, and relax. All right, let's do a little sumo squat for this one. So you're going to circle your leg up if this is comfortable for you, and then you stomp it down into a squat. You circle. And if you want, you can make that sound. That's not the official sound for this mantra, but it gets the energy down there. So here, try it. One more time. Good. Pulling down the heavens. Inhale. Exhale. 2. And 3. Okay, drop into the Wuji posture. Notice body, breath, and mind. And let's practice our 7 chakra Qigong set. So inhale to that root center like you're gathering energy. Then exhale, you feel like it expands. Inhale, gathering to that root. Exhale, it flowers open like a lotus, one of the images for these types of energy centers. One more time. And exhale. Then to that second chakra of the belly, inhale. And expand. And remember, the hands are in the front, but you also want to feel this expanding in the back. Inhale. And expand. And one more time. And expand. Okay, solar plexus. Inhale. Two. And 3. Okay, into the heart. Inhale. Exhale. Once more. into the throat, inhale, and expand. 2. And 3. And into the third eye. And this is really in the center of the head. So it expands in every direction. One more. And then the crown, inhale. Two. And 3. Exhale, bring it on down. Rest in that Wuji posture. Notice the changes. Then practicing with color. So visualizing that red light. And the idea of this color is it's that sense of vitality, this awakening force of the red. And you place that into that root center. So really getting yourself activate that somatic feeling of that root center. And then as you inhale, we're going to gather like we're gathering that red light. And as you exhale, letting that lotus blossom open, radiating with that red energy. Inhaling red light from like all around the universe. And you exhale and opening. Like that light is catalyzing this center and begins to glow with that red radiance. One more time. And open. And relax for a moment. Feel that opening and continuing to open. And then shifting to that sacral or generative chakra, the Svadhisthana. And calling to your awareness that orange sunset glow light. See if you can feel into the version of that color that seems to work the best for you. And then with our hands in the Qigong, we inhale, we gather that orange light. Remember, this is in the central channel, so into the center of the body. As you exhale, it begins to glow, opening up in every direction. Inhale with that orange light, like it's nourishing this center. And exhale, expand and open. One more time. And exhale. Good, releasing down. Feeling into that solar plexus region. Visualizing a gold and yellow. Once again, choose the type of golden yellow color feels right to you. And then with the hands, we'll inhale, we gather that light into the solar plexus. We exhale, we feel it radiate and open. Inhale, gathering that golden chi. Exhaling, radiating and opening. And one more time. And exhale, open. Release those hands down. And then feeling into the heart. Visualizing that green radiance. And just feeling into the color that really seems to work for you. In general, they say like an emerald green. really feel what seems to awaken and optimize this center in the body. And then as we inhale with the hands, we're gathering that green. And as you exhale, you expand that center out. Front, back, side to side, every direction. Inhale, gather the green light. Exhale and expand it out. One more time, inhale. And exhale. And release down. Then awareness at the throat center, calling to mind that sense of blue radiance. Often sort of like a sky blue or maybe even a cobalt or somewhere in between. And then when you're ready with your hands, you'll inhale as if gathering that blue light. Exhale, expanding that blue radiance. Inhale, gathering blue. Exhale, expanding that blue radiance. And one more time, inhale. And exhale. Release it down. Then tuning into that third eye, which is traditionally an indigo color. So it could be like a deep blue, or you might even see some purple type tones in this area. And when you're ready, using the hands, we inhale and we gather. We exhale, we let that center expand. We inhale, we gather that deep blue or purple light. We exhale, expanding it. And one more time. Releasing down. And finally to the crown center. You could decide, do you like a white light? Do you like a purple light? What do they call violet? Violet light. What do you think activates or awakens this center best for you? And then we do the Qigong with the hand motion. We inhale, we gather that light into the crown center. And exhale, feel it expanding. 2. And 3. And then release it all the way down. And just feel your body, breath, and mind. Notice what's changed. Any sensations you'd like to enjoy or pay attention to. And then stay in that meditative mode as you take your seat, if you're not already in a seat. And of course, if you need to, you're welcome to take a nap, restore yourself. But if you want to really engage, then you should try to set your spine up straight yogi style so we can really work that central channel. But you can do these sometimes as a lazy boy meditation. So you do what you need to, and you just look for, oh, what's optimal? What's necessary? Who am I right now? So finding your meditative seat, your dignified embodiment. And then awareness down in that root center. And these are inner structures. We use the physical body as a guide, but there's like a whole inner landscape. Like it might be kind of like a tesseract where you feel in there and there's something much bigger than your physical body seems to be. That's fine. As you feel that root center, you want to evoke inside that Bij mantra, Lum, Lum. You're welcome to repeat it verbally, although the silent version is how Sifu taught, Lum. And as you listen or repeat inside, you can do it just like that, Lum, Lum. Or the secret method, which you can only do inside, is you try to hear the L sound and the Ah sound and the sound all happening simultaneously. Lum, ah. I can't make that sound with my mouth, but you can make it in your mind. And so as you feel that Lum Bij mantra, feel as if it vibrates open and releases blockage in that lower Muladhara Chakra. Lum. And then feel that you can vibrate it downward and upward, forward and back, left and right. Waking up every aspect of this center, removing blockages. Lum. Good, then feel that that process will continue. And then ride the elevator up that central channel until you feel that you are in the Svadhisthana chakra. And we invoke or evoke that Bij mantra within, Vam. Vam. It feels a little like I'm revving my engine. Vam. So evoking that energy. And feel it in the center of that chakra, as well as vibrating down and up, clearing obstructions, forward and back, clearing obstructions, left and right. Vam. Letting that process continue. And then riding the elevator up to your solar plexus. And invoking that mantra, Ram, Ram, the fire bija. Feeling it vibrate deep at the level of the central channel. And as well, you can vibrate it downward and upward, loosening up any obstructions or constrictions. Vibrate it forth and backward. Ram. And leftward and rightward. So that this whole sort of sphere of influence in the body is filled with this vibration. It's gently being cleared of tension. Ram. Then letting that process continue on its own. Come on up to your heart center. Let the awareness float up till you find yourself right in the center of the chest, the Anahata chakra. And evoke that inner mantra, Yam, Yam. In many ways, the sound these all share is really to speak to the vibratory quality And the yi sound, yum, yum, is that special, specific vibration we want. So just like before, vibrating it downward and upward, yum. To the left and to the right, yum. To the front and to the back, yum. Yum. Clearing obstructions and constrictions. And letting that process continue. And let the awareness float up now to the throat. And invoke within the mantra hum, hum. And placing that mantra into the throat center, hum. Let it vibrate forward and backward, hum. Downward and upward, hum. To the left side and to the right side, hum. Clearing out every aspect of this center, hum. Letting that continue on its own. We can let the awareness float up now to that third eye center. We're still in the central channel. The Ajna Chakra. And we invoke the inner mantra, Om. Om mantra. And feel this vibrate in those various directions, left and right. Om, back and front. Om, above and below. Om. Letting that continue on its own, we let the awareness now float on up to the crown center. And in this lineage, the mantra is like the potent sound of silence. Like if you've ever heard a full silence. You can feel that as if it had like a potency that can move in and awaken that crown center. Good, and then in our seats, you can use the hand motions or just with your intention, we'll combine all three together. So as you inhale, you're going to inhale that red light into your base, Muladhara. As you exhale, internally hearing that lum sound, lum. You feel that red light open up. Let's do two more, inhale. Exhale, seeing the red light, imagining it vibrating with that lum sound. One more time. Good, then the orange light. And feeling that vam vibration. and the yellow light, and Ram. And the green light, and Yam. Blue light, and Hum. Indigo, and Om. And then the violet or the clear light or even white light, and that sense of silence. Releasing the hands down. And noticing body, breath, and mind. Then feeling into this full octave of these energetics of your being. And I'd like you to imagine that in each chakra, the visual that works best for me is like there's a little dial that I can turn, and it tunes that center to its optimal state. Say its optimal state of frequency or openness or whatever it is. And we want to do this intuitively, not just with the mind. So as you go into your root center, you can kind of just imagine like there's a little switch or a dial or whatever makes sense to you. And like you're just tuning that to its optimal state. And then same thing, we float up to the second chakra and don't think too much about it, just believe that it's so. And it's like, oh, there's the dial in there. Okay, does this need to be turned up a notch? Does it need to be turned down? Just using that visual, tuning that center to its optimal state for you, for your needs right now. And then same thing up to the solar plexus, tuning the dial. And then to the heart. And up to the throat. To the third eye center. And even to the crown. And then feel and imagine that this series of stations along the central channel has then formed a connection through your being between heaven and earth. That as these are all tuned, you become the bridge and the meeting point between where the energies of all possible, all creativity come in and come to form and relate with that which is already in form. As the earth and this earth energy communes through you, through that root chakra as its gate, that heaven energy communes through you, through that crown chakra as its gate. And just feel that you could line up these centers both posturally as well as through that sense of using the little inner dial or however it works for you, so that you become poised and balanced between these realms of heaven and of earth. Imagine then that these centers become like little transmitters and transformers, so that the energy that comes to your body from heaven and earth is being distributed just right, transformed, stepped down or stepped up, just according to your needs. And just please imagine that the exact nourishment for the health of your body and mind and spirit is flowing in, being transformed and distributed by this harmonized and optimized chakra system. Until finally we visualize ourselves in a glow of health, inner health, and maybe even outer health, until this rainbow light begins to shine from us and it radiates out into the world, the specific gifts that we have to offer. Whether you know them or don't know them, imagine that they're shining out from you like rainbow light. Wherever harmony is necessary, because you've created this bridge between heaven and earth, this conduit, you can call through whatever type of forces might be needed, and you can be an ambassador or a transmitter of those forces. You feel them shining out from you like rainbow light as a blessing. And then just gently letting that go, knowing that your chakras will be there when you come back, letting them just do their job, stay in that optimized position. Begin to take a few breaths. You can sigh them out if you like, or you could do the double breathing to even further regulate your vagus nerve. Because what happens in vagus stays in vagus nerve. Okay, and then when you feel more conscious, we'll get in our body and we'll do a little dragon spine exercise. Just wiggle our way back into form. Dragon spine. And finish. All right, so that's that full practice, kind of the long form version. Sifu would definitely teach this in Qigong class, just make us all stand there and do the lams and the bombs and all of that, which is totally groovy. You don't have to do that. You could, when I teach a Qigong class, like in a class, I generally just do the hands like we did yesterday. Or in a longer form workshop, then maybe we'll do some of it sitting down or do one aspect at a time. So that's that practice. How do you feel about that? Any questions or comments on the opening the 7 chakras Qigong? Feeling groovy? Some of you are still in the transcendent realm. That's all right. We could just end class now and let you receive the rest in the dream time. Carla, what do you say?
How often would it be optimal to practice this form?
As long as it doesn't make you a space cadet, you could do this every day if you want. No problem, because it's not necessarily intensive. Like we did a long version of it just now. We did this 30 or 20 or 40 minutes. I don't know how much, I didn't check the clock before we started, but it was a while. We were working that practice. But it doesn't have to be. You could do this in a 15-minute version, and that's fine to do every day unless it tends to make you forgetful or spacey or nervous, right? And then you could do a little less. There's a similar practice that my Lama recommends to do weekly, a chakra clearing, and it's in a different context. So there's more asking divine energy to kind of open up these centers. But he recommends that so as we go through our transformative practices or spiritual practices, we can get into ruts where they just become habitual. And you'll notice that sometimes after some of these trainings, it's oh, the master sequence, that was great. And then you get in 5 days in and you're well, I think I'll switch to the Taos 5. I mean, master sequence was cool a minute ago, but whatever. And I usually don't stop people from that too often. But one of the things can be is that we're not actually bringing our whole enthusiasm and focus to it. It's become easy enough that we slack off and then we make it boring for ourselves on accident. Nobody's trying to make things boring for themselves. So practices like this one are recommended to clear the rust out from the inner body so that you can come back to the other stuff fresh with more capacity for it. So that would be another way to do it. You could do it daily. This is Sifu recommended. This could be a prep for meditation, right? If you sit on your meditation seat, open up the thing and then meditate. Oh yeah, groovy. And so in that, if it doesn't space, if it's not too much, could be too powerful for some. It's not forceful, but it is potent. So if it's not too much, you could do that up to every day, but you don't have to. You could do it weekly or every 3 days or something like that. So yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see what else. Overall sense of energetic hunger in some spaces, but overfilled in others. As I took in that energy, I felt each space wanted or needed more, like I was overfilling a balloon. Yeah, so you work with that with your intention, right? So as you're doing the thing, you're not necessarily let's say my solar plexus was a little full, right? So when I'm doing this, I'm not necessarily bringing in more chi. In that case, I'd be oh, hi. And then I would go, be free, be free, my child, release. But in my second chakra, it needed more. And so in that, I really would bring it in on that. So the movements are subject to your intention in this, according to that intuitive feel as you go through. Yeah. Miko, what do you say?
I liked that we did it like one at a time, because there were a few that I would like blip out while we were working on that one. And then so doing it again and again, finally by the end, I'm like able to stay present with it as we're working with it. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, perfect. So that's a good method. And same thing, if you notice in your daily practice, if you like blip out, then maybe weekly, do this longer form one so that you get enough reps that you get some good ones in there. Yeah, and that's a method I have also used. More, there are some teachers who say like, well, don't just do more reps of the thing unconsciously. But I've also experienced that if you do enough reps, enough of them will be conscious to get some momentum going. So I also have that opinion personally. Okay, what else? Any questions on this, or just little insights that you noticed, so that especially for you Qigong 2sters, I can give you this so you can start to think about learning to teach it. But for all of us, so you can have this as your practice. You know, you can do this once a month, once a week, on the summer solstice, or whatever, every day, something like that. All right, Jim, what do you say?
If one of the chakras, like you said, my throat, the first go around, it felt like it was closing in.
Mm-hmm.
And it got a little panicky.
Yeah.
Then the second time I did it, it wasn't there. But on the third one, again, this feeling of being choked off there. Is that it being too full as I was bringing things in, or is there?
Yeah, generally, what I'll notice is that either it's already too full and you're having an intent that's like tonifying. And so it's like, oh, bro, what are you doing? But yeah, it won't happen when you're doing the sound, because the sound is clearing.
Right.
So that lends toward that interpretation. But the other is that, as you probably know from therapy, I know this from breath work and other stuff, is that when you bring attention to a center where there's psycho-emotional somatic material, it'll tell you.
Yeah.
You're like, hey, throat chakra, what's up? And it's like, I'm being fucking strangled. Your life, help me, the God of my precious. And so, in that case, there's a mystic mantra. All right, we learned mantras for 2-year-olds. We learned mantras for 5-year-olds. Now this is the mantra. Here are a couple of mantras of integrated adults. Number 1, the ultimate, thank you. Thank you. So you go like this, and the thing goes, my precious. You go, oh, thank you. Because it's like, thank you for telling me, right? We want the body. Normally we go, oh no. Okay, that's an okay mantra. It's a variation on the 2-year-old mantra, right? And oddly, magically, the more no's you have, the fewer oh no's you have. It's really quite interesting. Anyway, but instead of going, oh no, what's wrong with me? That's another shitty mantra. What's wrong with me? Are you kidding? Because every question we ask in the deep subconscious, we try to answer. So if you're asking that question, you're going to come up with something.
I couldn't.
Right? We can make a list. Oh, what's wrong with me? Oh, well, mom told me this, and society tells me that, and I've always feared this. Right? So we'd be better off asking, what's right with me? Like, if we're just going to ask random questions, let's ask some that we want answers to. Okay, so instead of going, oh no, instead of going, what's wrong with me, we go, thank you. And we're encouraging the soma psyche communication. And soma only knows how to communicate through sensation and symbology, right? That's why, Freudian dream work has been a bit discredited in like the evidence-based realm, because he went some weird places with that stuff. But then on the other side, like, I'm a big fan of the Jungian dream work or the Gestalt dream work, because people get some almost instantaneous insights, like, whoa. And it's because instead of like where Freud, we could say, had like that materialistic orientation, like, what does a cigar mean? And so obviously it means a penis, every time. Same with airplanes and skyscrapers and anything else you can think of. In the Gestalt and like the Jungian therapy, it's more like, what does that mean to you? What might that mean? And that's very similar to these alchemical traditions of inner work. It's less about memorizing a system of correspondences and more about learning to think symbologically and communicate with the symbological aspect of our being, right? So our soma only knows how to communicate through sensations and symbols. So when we go here, it's telling you a story in the only language it has. I'm being strangled. And then, so first mantra is thank you. And the second mantra of an integrated adult is what's needed here? What's needed here? And these are like mantras. They're great for integrated adults because they're almost universally applicable, right? Like if you went out to have a mocktail with your friend and your main orientation was thank you and what's needed here, there's hardly any way you could go wrong with that, right? Unless you forgot to think about what's needed for yourself too. If you're like, well, what's needed for them and not me? No. Wow, thank you. We're having mocktails. What's needed here? I need a seat outside or I have to go home. We're in the BA5 spike of COVID. Are you kidding? That's what's needed here. But then you get sat down and you go, well, what's needed now? Oh, I need to sit a little bit further away so I can feel comfortable taking off a mask so that they can see my facial expressions because I'm sensing they're kind of lonely. That's what's needed. And you can just ride that adult question just in every situation. So then when we come to this throat, the throat goes, and you go, thank you. And you go, you're welcome. And then inside you're like, well, what's needed here? And you will usually get a message because you started with thank you. Everybody likes that. And then you asked, and everybody likes to, and throats like to say, I need the precious. It burns us. So yes, both of those are that you mentioned are things that I see clinically and personally. One is, oh yeah, you tried to tonify something that was full, or two, you said hi to somebody who really needed attention and they spoke to you. So yeah, rest. There you go. So you got the message. So that's, you can take that into any of these centers. That's one of your practices that I'll recommend, is to take the what's needed mantra into those centers. It's a great way to activate your intuition. And then I don't have to give you a list of like, well, you could play a gong of this frequency and look at a red flower and like all of these correspondences and rituals from the traditional systems of the past. They're cool, but you could also get in a relaxed state and ask what's needed. And you would intuit this often. Okay, what else? Anything else from that to help make that practice clear for you? We got the bija mantras. That felt good. We knew how to do it. We got the colors. That felt groovy. We figured out how to do it. Okay, cool. Let's finish up our day, shall we? Oh, Janelle, yes, what do you say?
I did have a little trouble in myself kind of disconnecting from other systems that we've learned. And that was kind of complicated, especially since like I'm not like super feeling great. And so I was kind of like from like different colors and different sounds and different spaces, and that heaviness that I kept feeling, like the balloon feeling in places and like depletion in other places. I'm like, well, wait, is this because I'm not feeling good? Is this because of this? Or wait, this is totally energetic. This is something different. So I was a little like not really sure what I was feeling or where it was coming from. And yeah.
Well, was one of those balloons in your third eye?
No.
Oh, because you're talking like it was. Is it this?
No. Those are the ones that were hungry. It was it was like my throat and my solar plexus and my heart that felt really like, oh, don't put anything else in here. Like we can't handle that right now. And I was like, oh, well, maybe that's because I'm not feeling good. And this whole space is just kind of like, but I wasn't really sure.
Yeah, generally you just follow your intuition. Like in your case, my guess would be that you don't tonify while you're sick.
Yeah, don't tonify while you're sick.
And so your system is like, hey, you know this. Let me remind you.
Yeah.
Just, you're allowed to transcend. Have an out-of-body experience right now.
Yeah, like that was all good. That was all good. But this was like, no, don't do that.
So that would be my guess, right?
Okay.
It's like, oh yeah, let this thing do its thing. And you just go, watch Netflix in the sky or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, that makes sense. But I was having trouble with like, which system am I using and which color and for each space, and trying to like, no, it's this color right now. So that was interesting.
Yeah. And I think that might get easier as you feel better. I know for myself, cognitive tasks are easier when I have less discomfort to manage. And it's a cognitive task while we're learning it. So this is the slogan from our lineage. It's on my mind all the time lately. It's called Walk One Road at a Time. This is one of the training slogans from my Sifu. Walk one road at a time. And what it tended, especially in our lineage, because we are a ecumenical, non-sectarian, alchemical work lineage, we can draw from different practices, that we've received. And that may mean, is green my liver or is green my heart? Wait, my liver's in the solar plexus chakra, really? But now you're telling me its color is over here. And that's when you apply, walk one road at a time. And usually when we have enough energy to be doing cognitive tasks, we just say, I'm doing the chakra system right now. And the system goes, oh, right. Pardon me. I was just reminding you of something I thought you might have wanted to know. And we use that adult mantra. Thank you. But what's needed here is to come back over to this. Then later, just for fun, a real pain in the ass is when you learn that in the Tibetan system, this one's white, and this one's red, and this one's blue. Now this one's yellow, and now the bottom one's green. Or did I switch those? I mostly only know the top three of that really well because it kept me in the outer school for 20 years and just let me in the inner school. So it's totally different. And it's because I don't think this is the case for you, but for some of us where this becomes a problem is because we tend to think of it in that gross orientation or identification where it's like, is the heart, just level with me here. Is the heart green or is it blue? Come on. And the real question is, what are you using it for? The heart is made of red blood muscle. And the chakra is a vacuole in an invisible body. It don't have no color at all. So it could be anything we want. What are you using it for? Right? So the green is like this, it's like the growthful quality of nature and like the Emerald City of Oz and just like whatever that means to you. Whereas the blue in the Tibetan yoga is they're really working kind of on that unstruck sound Zen koan. And it's supposed to remind you because they do all this sky gazing meditation when the sky is clear. And you can get into a state where your mind is just like, And so they put that here. And it catalyzes that recognition. And then they don't use yam here. They do om, ah, hum, so, ha. They have a totally different, but the reason for that, the hum is kind of like in the Sufi, like Allahu. And it's kind of like when you do Brahmari, there's this humming mantra, hum. You make this like inner tone. And so this hum is meant to like evoke your essence, that sky-like nature of mind. And so they put all that in there. So then you got to be like, wait, it's not green for the liver. It's not blue for the sky. It's green for the heart chakra, for the growthful, altruistic nature of this sucker. Okay. And the way to do that is you just walk one road at a time. As well as there are times, this now I'm kind of speaking to you as teachers, but there are times when certain practices are less appropriate for us than others, and our subconscious will constantly be trying to grab the wheel. So you'll be like, I'm trying to do the chakras, I'm trying to do the chakras. And it's like, girl, you need to focus on your liver. Get back to that 6 healing sounds. What are you doing with your chakras? And okay, to my ego, it all seems the same. It's all Qigong, right? But there's this kind of body wisdom that like, nope, your Qigong is this right now. And sometimes you do that and then you graduate. And so it's really quite interesting. The other thing on that note, just to share with you, is that this is very indicative of the moment in a lot of ways. So when you do this, you don't have to assume that, like in Janelle's case, these are chronically too full and these are chronically too empty or something like that. Like that just might be the treatment that you need right now. Is like, oh, hands off the trunk, wake up the transcenders so that she can have a good nap or something like that. Like that might be what your body is trying to get out of this session. So that's something fun to know. Okay. What else, Deborah?
How do you know when that is the case and your subconscious is speaking to you, and when it's just a cop out from doing the practice, then that really is what your subconscious is trying to avoid, that actually would be helpful for you?
Oh yeah, let me give you a unsatisfactory answer. You have to feel it. Okay, is that unsatisfactory? That's because it's not completely the real answer. It's one of the answers, and sometimes it is satisfactory. The real answer is all of this stuff happens relationally. If you really want to grow, invoke the interpersonal. And so you make a best friend who's a yogi or a qigong head, and then you ask them, hey, do you think I'm dodging my stuff? Or do you think this is my intuition? And let them tell you. And that works pretty good. And that's part of the old like guru yoga. Not all the highfalutin part of it, but just the practical idea of mentorship is you find someone who you generally respect, right? Not like, oh my gosh, they know everything. They're a qigong yogi master or something, but like, oh, they've been pretty, like I have people in my life like this, right? Where it's like, they've been pretty right on in assessing my blind spots. Okay, cool. And they can even have their own blind spots, but as a like doctors may have crummy health, but still be able to prescribe you the right antibiotics. They don't have to be perfected beings. And you develop that type of trust, and then you give them the benefit of the doubt, right? It's not like trusting them unconditionally, but it is in classic. That's why you have sifus and gurus and mentors. The practical level is we can't always trust our own intuition. Like we've got blind spots and we've got projection and we've got all this stuff. And so we invoke somebody else and then we test out what they said. And that would be the last other kind of unsatisfactory answer is test it out, right? Like if you switch tracks and you stop growing, you were probably dodging. If you switch tracks and your growth accelerates, then, oh yeah, you were probably, intuition was correct. A great example for me is like that little intuition this morning of like, oh, right, friendships, intimacy and friendships. Like often the direction of growth feels like good trigger point work in the massage office, right? It's not a little lullaby that puts you to sleep, but it's also not so painful that you like can't breathe. It's the good ache. It's the good ache. And that's the same thing. Like I highly recommend if it's right for your body, like take up some semi-vigorous type of workout, because you have to learn what's the good kind of pain, right? What's in yoga, like how long should I hold this downward dog? And there's this magic moment where it hurts just enough. And it's like, ooh, now we're doing something. If you don't do that, like you get some growth. If you go too far, you get backslide because you injured yourself. But where's that where's that thing? So yeah, those are a couple answers. The other thing too is that like we don't always have to take ourselves too seriously. Like, in my opinion, just my humble opinion, if you want to do the master sequence one day, take a day off, then do the 7 chakras, then take another day off, then do the 8 brocades, and then take the weekend off. Great. You're doing like 1,000% more transformational practice than most people on earth. And the rest of the time, you're probably working to benefit the rest of us. So in that, we can do thank you and what's needed. And you're probably going to like be guided perfectly, in my opinion. Oh boy. What else? Do those cats have anything to add? Those doggies have anything to add? Oh yeah, and that cat also. Hello. Where's the doggies? A doggy! Gosh, I love a doggy. Okay, so we're about wrapped up. Let's finish it off, shall we? One thing we didn't go over, I wanted to talk to you about yoga asana and the chakra centers. And we can actually do that quite swiftly. You don't need a lot on that. It's basically just the art of congruence and intention. The art of congruence and intention. So the root chakra responds really well to squats. Why? Because they're all about your roots. It also responds pretty well to stretching your leggies and squatting and stretching your legs at the same time, and pelvic floor exercises. And you probably don't have to give yourself an enema, but that's one of the classical ones. Because it's working with this area of the body. So in the Tibetan system, you want to think about just the various ways you can work these. You can twist them. Excuse me. You can laterally stretch them. You can flex and extend. And then, that was a bad example on that one, but you can bang on them. Right? And these are all ways that in the outer yoga traditions, they use to start to uncrimp these centers in the body. So how is this applicable? Well, because we're developing this psyche-soma integration, what happens, let's say, you're like, oh, wow, that survive and thrive thing, that really made sense to me. And so you start to get into your Qigong and your yoga practice, and you're like, I'm going to add to every Qigong practice, I'm going to hold this goddess pose. And I'm going to think about my solid roots. And then as you do this, because your body, your psyche only communicates through the language of sensation and symbology, you make a living symbol that feels rooted and strong. And it's one of the ways you can start to counteract the toxic mantra of my survival's always threatened. I always feel unstable. And because you go in here and you're going, I feel really stable. Lam! I'm the goddess of the goddess pose. And then you could start to invoke. So those warrior poses of yoga, great. Right? And then you start to get into like Ardha Chandrasana. And why is this one cool? Well, not the way I'm doing it while I'm talking to you, but because as I balance and my body gets this sense of balance, we're communicating to the deeper mind, I am stable. I am rooted. I am balanced. Okay, so if you wanted the second chakra, take up belly dancing. Or take up Tai Chi. Or if you have an intimate partner who's open to it, be like, we're going to set aside an hour and do these tantric sex exercises, where we don't have any goal. We're just going to move our pelvi as much as possible, right? And all of these, if they're congruent with your intent, become exercises by which you can work with those energies. So hopefully throughout this workshop, you've gotten this idea that it's developing a language of this psyche-soma interaction. Yeah, hula you could do. A great book, if you want, on the Tibetan practice is by Tenzin Wangyal. I forget the title of the book, but it's his book on Salung, which is the Tibetan practice of moving the winds and the channels. And one of the reasons he talks about this is because in his system, so they do these classic Tibetan exercises, you know, where you're swinging the arms around to move the chakras and stuff. But he talks about how you put your awareness on that area. That's what makes it an energy exercise, right? So some people, I learned this is to wake up this heart center, move that wind, but other people, they have the same set of exercises, but they do this. And for them, it's a crown chakra exercise. Who's right? Well, where'd you put your mind? If you put your mind up here, don't call it a heart chakra exercise, and you're right. If you put your mind down here, don't call it a crown chakra exercise, and you're right. So it's just the congruence. It's just the congruence that makes it a magical exercise, right? A psyche, soma, spirit communication practice. So core strengthening for that second chakra, hula, belly dance, yoga stuff, core strengthening for that Manipura chakra, etc. What warrior pose in yoga for the heart center, eagle pose, come on, eagle pose, etc. And it's just getting those moving or moving in a way that's congruent with your intent. Moving in a way that's congruent with your intent. So that should give you everything you need to cultivate your ongoing and transforming list of therapeutic exercises for the chakras. Throat chakra, you better throw in some journaling. You better call Janelle and get a voice lesson. You better call Maria and have her teach you how to shout at people if necessary to assert your boundaries, because she's like a Qigong voice teacher, you know, like, this one, learn, you know, what's going to teach you to stop thinking and start intuiting. That's the one you need to do, as well as headstands and forehead rubs. Ooh. Right. So you can kind of build your own. We don't have to memorize a whole list of these, but you can develop your own yoga practice to affect each of these centers. And the point is to put your intent there. The same thing. The last thing to tell you is that we went through these symbology and just, you know, for me, just a fun, intuitive conversation about some stuff about the chakras, right? Because I assume you know some of these things, you can research them on their own. I just wanted to give you some of the tidbits that I've found really interesting and essential. But then as you do your Qigong, you start to put those in. And so as you're working on the second chakra, you can do just visualize the light, whatever, but you can also be visualizing, may this nourish my capacity for intimacy. May this grow the warmth that I bring to pleasure, you know, and just as you're doing that Qigong exercise, you add the intent of each of those little aspects of this center, and all of a sudden that becomes where it goes a little deeper and starts to open that up. That's most of what I wanted to tell you. I had other exercises we could have done and things like that, but pretty much I feel complete with the intentions for this class. I would love to do a brief closing exercise. That would be, unless you really don't want to share, I would love to hear from you. What's something you enjoyed learning this weekend, or even something you were surprised to learn? Or something that you learned again and it was fun the first time and maybe it was fun this time too, you know, but what this helps us to review, and it also helps us create a little integrative closing practice. So would you be willing to do that with me? That would be really fun. Okay, cool. So what's something you enjoyed learning or was interesting, or you learned again, or you'll never want to learn again, or what? Go ahead, Matthew.
I really liked the 3 Dan Tiens Qigong set, and I'm going to do that a lot. And I also really like the word parts.
The which one?
The etymology.
Oh, yes. That's super fun.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I always like the Dharma parts of the other ones too. I like a little bit of both.
Yeah. Cool. Glad you were here. Thanks for being here. All right, Carla, you're ready?
I want to thank you so much for this teaching. It's wonderful. I am coming away with using the long form as often as I can tolerate, because it's been very powerful to have the full spectrum identification, safe place to explore and how to grow with it. So it's just all bundled up really beautifully.
Beautiful. Excellent. So you got a real full Qigong practice you get to take. Most wonderful. All right. And thanks, Samwise, for coming as well.
Thank you.
All right. Who else? Anybody willing and able? Janelle.
Well, there was a lot that I really loved about this. The walking meditation yesterday was awesome. That was one of my highlights of the day, and just the insights that I discovered through that were really powerful and kind of stuck with me and continued to open as the day went on, and that was really neat. I love the etymology of it. That's really important to me, because I'm not necessarily coming at this from the space that I think a lot of people are, with a lot of real in-depth knowledge of like how yoga works and a lot of that stuff. I don't have that. So to actually like get a lot of that and have a place where I can go and go, hey, I can go look it up there now. Like that's really important for me. So that gave me like an extra little thing to stabilize some of the anxiety that I have about sharing some of this, is not knowing some of that. And that was a really powerful addition to that foundation for me.
Yay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
So thank you so much. Thank you.
My pleasure. Okay, who else? Deborah.
I just love the way that you create a contextual framework and the history and the etymology, and just seeing how these different practices might fit in, and the thank you and what is needed here to really look at, what to choose amongst all the different practices that you could possibly be doing in a moment, what's actually going to be supportive of integration and wholeness.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I love it. May it continue to serve you.
Thank you.
What else? What else? I love hearing what you got. I love us doing a review process. Jim, go for it.
Was looking back through my notes. I enjoyed it. Finally got causal, subtle, and non-dual. Okay, I got that. That was way cool.
Nice. Finally, wonderful.
It was like, yeah, okay. And the gross, the gross. So, being able to associate those words with parts. Yeah. Awesome. The 3 power centers exercise, again, something to share with my class. They just like moving. That'll be, and they're all pretty elderly, so it's a really easy thing for them to do. Yeah. And I like the history, explaining the words. That was really special also. So thank you. And that's it.
Yay. Glad you're here. I love that you guys enjoy the things that I most like to teach. That's really convenient. Oh, how lucky. Miko, and then Kat.
Yeah, I also really liked the 3 Dan Tiens Qigong. And I loved learning about not only the chakras, but how it might apply like when working with clients, either like on the table or in our compassion alchemy sessions. And also the work aspect of like our own inner work aspect of working with these centers.
Yay. Yeah, I didn't get to teach you like the hands-on table routine. That was another original plan to, be able to do that in a live retreat. But, the world's going in a different way than that for the moment. But the good news is, remember healing through sensing. That's where you just sense. That's what you do at each of these centers. And then the ones that need to grow. The ones that need to shrink will shrink. It's pretty cool. You do like inner smile with your hand. And then later, as you get more advanced, you can kind of like put the mantra in there to break up blockage, or you can visualize that colored light. So it's very intuitive. That's the good news, is because for those of you who have had that level 1 chi healing training and you do your own practice, then applying it to others is quite intuitive. It'll be fun one day to maybe do a retreat on that, because doing those sessions as trades is like, oh my gosh, it's ridiculous. But you can start practicing on your buddies just with the healing through sensing. And in this, I recommend you start from the root and then you just work your way up with that inner smile vibe, like bring them to the balance for now, and then just go back at the end to the feet so the person can find their way back to their body. And it's just a really nice session, and they will report all sorts of cool psychedelic things that happened. So that's pretty fun. And for y'all who have had that level 1 chi healing, it's safe to do. There's no other contraindications than were included with that. So, okay, Kat, what do you say?
Just wanted to say thank you. This was a gap in my knowledge, really, because I've had a lot of experience in studying of the Dan Tiens and the Chinese medicine forms of the energy. And I hadn't really had any experience with the chakras before, except for, I see them, and there's pictures and drawings and scrolls and necklaces and the rainbows. And mostly when my patients sometimes want to talk about them, and, I know a lot more now, so I will feel a lot better having those conversations. So yeah.
Oh, good. That makes me happy. Because I wondered, for me, the class sort of started to drag a little bit this afternoon. I was like, okay, this is what the name of the throat chakra is, and this is what it does. But part of my, for you Qigong instructors and for the empathy dojo work, you will have students who are just like, oh, and I think my throat chakra is this, but it's connected to my second chakra, this. And you need to know what the hell they're talking about. So good. If that came through, then now I know why the middle of the class dragged for me, because I always want to do something flashy, but sometimes what's needed is a vocabulary lesson. So thanks for reminding me. That actually really helps to frame my experience better than I'm like, oh, am I boring these guys? I don't know. So yeah, because that was really an intent, is for an instructor just to have these sort of cross-cultural languaging skills, as well as connected to our specific lineage practices. That part's for you. So that makes me very happy. Wow, we've been through a great journey. So you're walking away with 2 main Qigong sets. One that's relatively new. We may have done it before, but relatively new, which is that 3 Dan Tiens Qigong. And then the other, which we introduced before, to some of you at least. And now you have kind of the full transmission of it, which is that 7 chakra Qigong in a set. And then all of the other work, the introspective work, is what you load that with. And then those walking meditations, feel free to do those walking meditations. Aside from just that initial experience, those are also practices that one could do. Go to the park. You have to take the dogs out. Take them from your middle Dan Tien if that's your weak link. take them from the upper dantian, you know, and play with that. And this is the art of like tantric and non-dual practice, is stuff you can do at the dog park to optimize your sacred embodiment, right? That's what it really comes down to. And so it's right there at your fingertips. Doing the dishes from the Dan Tiens works really well. Okay, was there any last note from you, Reverend Faj? Oh, did you like the turning the dials? How'd you feel about that one? I love that one. And I love to end class with that, or in that practice session, because like the stuff that Jim and Janelle were kind of saying, like, oh, some centers, they didn't want this. And so that one tends to kind of like balance it all out at the end. It's really just pleasant. And so it's similar to when we did the 3 Dan Tiens balancing, but it has slightly a different tone. So don't forget that one either. Put it in there, and your life will be grand. It really will. Okay, so please take all happy, grateful feelings of benefit that you might have, and just imagine that we could amplify them by sharing them with others, that they shine out from you like a beautiful light. Maybe especially even to those of us gathered in this Zoom meeting, we can bless each other. And then that becomes an even greater nectar that flows out just wherever peace or healing or harmony, integration is needed all over our entire planet. And then, of course, it obviously flows right back to you, and so on, and so on, and so on. All right, thank you for attending. 3 Dan Tiens and 7 chakras. For you level 2s, your announcements. I think I want to do a little completion course class with you, so we can do kind of a wrap up. This was our last big class. I think I'm going to be putting out one more seasonal Qigong, and I'm going to give you the option. You can either do the course I just put out on back pain, and then I'll make a test you can take on that, or you can do the next seasonal Qigong that I'll put out. I haven't quite decided what I'm going to nail down, but anyway, the summer seasonal Qigong is coming soon. So that's fun. You should buy that and do it anyway. Of course, it's going to be grand. And then we'll get you guys a little workshop just for completion of level 2. We'll get that on the schedule. And then in the autumn, I'm not doing a Qigong instructor certification this year. Just didn't line up. I didn't want to advertise it. I didn't want to wrangle anyone. They didn't show up on their own without me advertising it. So we're not doing it. We're doing other things. Great. And the other thing we're doing is I'm going to lead a 4-month by donation meditation course. So it'll be based on the Compassion Alchemy protocol. And so those of you who did Empathy Dojo last year and you want to have that meditation teacher component, that's where you can integrate that. And then it's by donation, so you don't have to pay for that again because you already paid for it. But also, if you're feeling quite wealthy, you have the chance to earn great merit by just giving me cash when you don't have to. So it's like, whichever way you want to do it, we all benefit. Either I get merit by giving you a free course, or you get merit by paying for a free course, or like what, like it's going to be good. So that's what's coming. It's going to be open to all levels, because the idea really is to get some of these really cool secular meditation techniques. That course is going to be a very kind of evidence-based, Himalayan inspired, but evidence-based meditation course, 4 meetings with online material in between, and more announcements as I make them. I got to write some copy, but that'll happen like mid-September or autumnal equinox kind of time that'll launch. So be stoked about that. And then what I think is that'll do 4 months. And then I'll do, if there's enough interest, I'll do the communication course also as a much lighter than the Empathy Dojo, but as a free kind of public service to people. And then that's what we'll do with 2023. Then we'll see what 2024 brings. 2024 is going to bring some nice Marvel movies, that's for sure. I just noticed. But in terms of coursework, that's what I've got going. All right, my friends. So sending you much love. I'm about to go take a big nap because I'm underslept, but I am full of gratitude. So bless you. We'll see you next time.